To understand LLMs and their issues, it is important to understand how they work. So, let's peek under the hood of a large language model. Imagine you are writing an email and start the sentence with, "Hi Mary, thanks for the update." What would you predict the next word to be? How would you continue this email? Let's say you have 3 options as words to pick from: on, about, and car. Which one would you pick? On and about both make sense, but car does not, even if you wrote many emails about cars. This approach of predicting the next word based on words already available is called the n-gram language model approach, where the n relates to the number of words to consider in predicting the next word. Specifically, an n-gram language model uses n-1 words as context to predict the next word. While this concept underpins more complex language models, GPT and other neural network-based language models have a deeper contextualization of text related to the transformer architecture, which I cover in more detail in my AI classes. Nevertheless, understanding how an n-gram language works will allow you to understand how the more complex large language models function. Let's consider, for example, a 4-gram language model. In this case, we will use 3 words as context to predict the 4th word. As you learned in the previous module, a language model works with a prompt, the text used by the model to complete a task. Let's start with the phrase, "This contract will be considered void if." This is a 4-gram model, so 3 words are used by the language model as the context and used to predict the next word. To generate the next word, we look at the probabilities of each word in the vocabulary that appear after these words, not necessarily in this order. Because we ignore all the other words, this model works on the Markov assumption that the next word only depends on the word specified in the context and nothing else. This is somewhat naive and definitely not true in a real scenario, but empirical studies show this approach works remarkably well. If this model has been trained on a large corpora, we can fetch the distribution probabilities of the words associated with this context. We are looking at the word W with the highest probability given the context identified by these 3 words. Let's say the most probable word in this case is the word not. We add this word to the text and move on. Once the word is added to the text, we move the context window by a word. The new context is identified by the 3 words void if not. We repeated the process and found that the most probable word for this context is properly. We add this word to the text and continue with this process. Once again, we add this word to the text and move the context window by a word. The new context is identified by the 3 words if not properly. With the new context, the most probable word is signed. This process continues until an end condition is verified. This condition might be when the model generates a word indicating punctuation, such as a period, question mark, or exclamation point, or when the probability of the next word falls below a certain threshold, indicating lower confidence in the text's coherence or relevance. Let's use the punctuation as the condition to stop the generation process. The phrase generated is coherent and properly formed. Generative AI models, like GPT, use a much broader context, not just a few words but entire paragraphs or documents, to predict the next word. They also incorporate techniques to capture and generate language patterns, allowing them to produce contextually rich and varied text. While n-grams can generate good sentences, generative AI models can generate whole paragraphs of coherent and contextually relevant content, showcasing a significant evolution in language modeling capabilities. What happens when the language model is asked something unrelated to the domain it was trained on? This is a language model trained on a corpus of cooking books, and we applied the same prompt as before. In this case, the LM produces total nonsense. This brings me to the 3rd issue. How can you trust the output of a large language model when the entire output is based on probabilities? In general, you cannot. While a language model like the Ngram helps understand the inner workings of generative AI, there is a notable difference in the approach used by these two technologies. Traditional language models, including Ngram models, are primarily based on probabilistic models. These models predict the next word in a sequence based on the probabilities derived from the frequencies of word sequences in the training data. Using statistical methods, they calculate the likelihood of word occurrences within a specific context. Generative AI works in a similar fashion to large language models. However, it is architected and implemented using deep neural networks. These models learn patterns and relationships within the data through layers of interconnected nodes called neurons, and can handle much more complex patterns and longer text sequences than traditional probabilistic models. They are trained on vast amounts of text data and use a strategy called self-attention mechanisms to weigh the importance of different words in a sentence or passage. This enables them to generate coherent and contextually relevant text over longer sequences. It is completely fine if you don't know what a deep neural network is. Think of it as a software machinery that simulates our brain's inner workings and can learn complex patterns in the data. Because I want you to know a little bit about the technique used by more complex generative AI models to produce the output, let's consider the following. Imagine you have a big book and want to find out what happens next in the story. The way traditional language models are guessing the next word is like reading the book, line by line, and making a guess based only on the last few words you've read. This is how the Ngram model works. Large language models use a technique called the attention mechanism. With the attention mechanism is like having a smart bookmark that can quickly look back over all the pages you've read and figure out which parts are most important to help guess what comes next. This way, the guess is better because it uses more of the story to decide which words to produce next. Next, how can a language model be creative and coherent? What is the concept of hallucinations and why do they happen?